Precisely 6:45. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News edited by Danushka Madhavale and read by Sharifa Tahir. Headlines. Finance State Minister says that IMF team to arrive in Sri Lanka for second EFF review. The railway strike, which was scheduled to be launched last night, has been called off. The bill to authorize a National Transport Commission to regulate the transport fare of all vehicles will be submitted to the Parliament. Sri Lanka is to join US-led International Counter-Ransomware Initiative. Declaration of Assets and Liabilities Law to be amended. Foreign news, the World Food Programme says Northern Gaza aid convoy blocked. In sport, second T20 International between Sri Lanka tour of Bangladesh will be played today. We move on to local news in detail now. Finance State Minister Shehan Sembasinghe said that an International Monetary Fund team will be arriving in Sri Lanka for the second review of the Extended Fund Facility Programme, which is scheduled to commence tomorrow. Minister Sembasinghe said that he believes the second review for the third disbursement under the Extended Fund Facility will be conducted for a period of around 2 weeks during a press briefing at the Presidential Media Centre last Wednesday. The minister speaking to the media said the second review will commence from March 7th and that they are very confident that it will be a smoother review than the first review. Locomotive Engine Operators Union Secretary said that the railway strike, which was scheduled to be launched tonight by several railway trade unions, has been called off following a favourable response by the Transport Ministry. Addressing the media, the Secretary said the strike was scheduled to commence last night salary anomalies. Therefore, the union has called for a strike, but since the Cabinet Office has informed that the relevant decision will be sent to the Transport Ministry, there is no need to carry out the planned strike and the strike will be called off, the convener informed. Train services will operate as scheduled for the convenience of the commuters. Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena says that the bill to authorize the National Transport Commission to regulate transport fare of all vehicles will be submitted to the Parliament. The minister expressed these views at the press conference held at the Department of Government Information yesterday to announce the Cabinet decisions. This act will be adopted once it is read in Parliament. Accordingly, the minister further mentioned that the National Transport Commission has full authority to regulate the transport fare of buses, school vans, office vans and three-wheelers. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation giving you the news. Continuing with more stories here at home. The government said Sri Lanka has received an invitation to join the inaugural International Counter-Ransomware Initiative, which the United States has started as a common platform in 2021 with a group of other countries for international coordination to eliminate ransomware. So far, 48 countries around the world and the European Union, as well as the International Police, have joined the initiative. The Government Information Department said it has been recognized that it can benefit from joining the International Counter-Ransomware Initiative since Sri Lanka has recently faced various problems due to ransomware. Accordingly, the Cabinet Ministers has approved the joint proposals presented by the President in his capacity as the Minister of Technology and Minister of Justice, Prison Affairs and Constitutional Reforms to join the International Counter-Ransomware Initiative and taking further action. In addition to the officials and categories of individuals required to disclose their assets and liabilities as outlined in the amended Declaration of Assets and Liabilities Law No. 1 of 1975 by Act No. 74 of 1988, Section 80 of the Anti-Corruption Act No. 9 of 2023 introduces provisions for further disclosure by various other officials and categories of individuals. The necessity for disclosing liabilities is emphasized. According to this recent amendment, the President, Prime Minister, Members of Parliament, Provincial Governors, Provincial Council members and officers of the Provincial Public Service, elected representatives and officers of local government bodies, as well as judges and government officials appointed by the President, are mandated to disclose their assets and liabilities. This requirement extends to members and officers of ministries and government departments as well as individuals appointed under Article 41A(1)(e) of the Constitution who are not members of the Parliament. That's local news for the moment.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala.
Cabinet spokesman, Transport, Highways and Mass Media Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena said the Cabinet of Ministers has approved the proposal by President Ranil Wickremesinghe to prohibit the use of school premises for political purposes. He was speaking at the weekly Cabinet media briefing held yesterday at the Government Information Department. Accordingly, it has been decided to instruct provincial governors not to grant permission to use school premises for political purposes during this week's Cabinet meeting held on Monday under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. He said that some people are organizing political meetings under the guise of donating aid to schools, and this decision has been taken in consideration of the suggestions made by the parties who love children to prevent this practice. He said that in the history of this country, various state leaders and politicians never used the school and the school grounds for their own or others' politics.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala.
The Natural Hazards Early Warning Centre of the Met Department has issued an amber colour heat index advisory valid for today for western, southern provinces and Ratnapura-Puttalam, Batticaloa districts. Heat index, the temperature on human body, is expected to increase up to caution level at some places in western, southern provinces and in Ratnapura-Puttalam and Batticaloa districts. The Natural Hazards Early Warning Centre requests people who work at job sites to stay hydrated and take breaks in the shade as often as possible. People's lives indoors who live indoors should do check up on the elderly and the sick. The centre asks motorists to never leave children unattended in vehicles. It also instructs to limit strenuous outdoor activities, find shade and stay hydrated. The centre also requests the general public to wear lightweight or white or light-coloured clothing.
Coming up, World News.
World News headlines. The World Food Programme says Northern Gaza aid convoy blocked. At least 35 died due to surprise snowfall and heavy rains in Pakistan. German patient vaccinated against COVID 217 times. World News in detail. The World Food Programme says its first attempt in 2 weeks to bring food aid to northern Gaza was blocked by the Israel Defense Forces. The UN agency says the convoy of 14 lorries was turned back at a checkpoint and was later looted by crowds of desperate people. It comes a day after the World Health Organization said children are dying of starvation in northern Gaza. In a statement, the WFP said efforts to deliver desperately needed food supplies to the area resumed on Tuesday, but were largely unsuccessful. The agency says the convoy was turned back by the IDF after a 3-hour wait at the Wadi Gaza checkpoint. The trucks were then rerouted and later stopped by a large crowd of desperate people who looted the food, taking around 200 tons from the trucks, the WFP said. At least 35 people died while dozens more were injured as freezing rain and unexpected snowfall hit remote areas of Pakistan over the weekend. 22 children were among the fatalities, many of whom were crushed in landslides that buried their homes, disaster management authorities said. The extreme weather hit Pakistan's northern and western regions, clogging roads and damaging hundreds of houses. Experts were surprised by the snow as Pakistan is typically mild in March. Mushtaq Ali Shah, a former director of the country's meteorological department, attributed the unusual conditions to climate change. He added that a light hailstorm that lasts for a few moments would not be as surprising, but it is unusual for that to continue for over 30 minutes. Finally, on world news, a 62-year-old man from Germany has, against medical advice, been vaccinated 217 times against COVID, doctors report. The bizarre case is documented in the Lancet Infectious Diseases journal. The shots were bought and given privately within the space of 29 months. Researchers from the universities of Erlangen and Nuremberg say the man appears to have suffered no ill effects. That's on World News.
Development News.
The Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval for to increase the amount spent for a meal for a student in the school food program up to 110 rupees. The Cabinet also green-lighted to implement the school food program for 170 days in 2024 for students in primary sections. The proposal was submitted by Education Minister Sushil Premachandra. The school food program is implemented in 7,902 schools belonging to 100 educational zones covering 1.08 million students. 85 rupees is spent per day for a meal for one student. That's on Development News.
Moving on with sports news.
Second T20 International between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh will be played today. The match will be played at Sylhet as a day-night encounter. It is scheduled to commence at 5:45 p.m. Sri Lanka won the first match of the series by 3 runs. That's on Sports News.
Go ekak thiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හින හැබැ කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Meta says it has resolved a technical issue which caused Facebook, Messenger, and Instagram to go down. Hundreds of thousands of users worldwide were unable to access them for around 2 hours on Tuesday. People trying to log out the websites and apps were finding error messages and were unable to refresh their feeds as normal. Meta also apologized to those who had been affected, saying it resolved the problem as quickly as it could. Tracking website down detector indicated the outages had affected multiple countries.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak thiyana youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හින හැබැ කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
And on economic news, the price of the world's largest cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, briefly hit a new all-time high of more than $69,000. It surpassed the previous record set in November 2021, though by 2022, Bitcoin's value had sunk to $16,500. The new surge in price has been spurred by U.S. finance giants pouring billions into buying bitcoins. The cryptocurrency rose to around $69,200 shortly after 1500 GMT on Tuesday before falling back. It was trading around $62,185 by 2100 GMT. Bitcoin's value has spiked by more than 50% over the last month, according to cryptocurrency market data platform CoinMarketCap. That's on economic news.
Weather report.
Showers may occur at a few places in southern province and in Ratnapura and Kalutara districts in the evening or night. Mainly dry weather will prevail in the other areas of the island. Misty conditions can be expected at some places in western and Sabaragamu provinces and in Galle and Mathura districts during the morning. That's the weather update, and before we wind up the bulletin of news, back to the headlines. State Minister of Finance says that IMF team is to arrive in Sri Lanka for second EFF review. The railway strike, which was scheduled to be launched last night, has been called off. The bill to authorize the National Transport Commission to regulate the transport fare of all vehicles will be submitted to the Parliament. Sri Lanka is to join US-led International Counter-Ransomware Initiative. Declaration of Assets and Liabilities Law to be amended. Foreign news, the World Food Programme says Northern Gaza aid convoy blocked. In sports, second T20 International between Sri Lanka tour of Bangladesh will be played today. With that, we conclude the morning bulletin of news, and it's back to Anupama this morning to give you some good company.